Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Catalyst Conversations webinar, part of our Catalyzing Change in Chemical Sciences project. My name is Dr. Zeljka Krpetic, and I'm a PI for this project, and I'm welcoming you this morning from Salford. So this is Northwest UK, if you were not aware of our university, and we're based in the School of Science, Engineering, and environment. Our project is an EDI research project, collaborative in nature between the University of Salford, University of Kent, and University of York, and it gathers together a large number of project partners, student partners, project students, our project supervisors and allies who are all working together in the background to bring significant change in how minoritized and Black students are perceived, and we are trying to change their career pathways and give them more access to research and things that universities are not usually offering to them. So as a result of our work together, we have co-designed this webinar series with our student partners and our project students, and it's all been a hard work of our students and partners to produce this webinar together. So today we're gathered again with welcoming Dr. Umran Ali, who will present a very hot topic today, which is how to get a job one-on-one, developing a lifelong professional framework. We have 2 more sessions, so if you're interested in following us further, please use this link to sign up for the next 2 sessions. I'm going to invite Umran now to take over, but this session will explore challenges that ethnically minoritized students are facing in today's job market, and introducing some important EDI perspectives and principles. So please make sure that you leave your comments and thoughts in our Padlet. That will be available to you throughout this session, so we can use this as a feedback to reflect in our watch parties as well. They're happening in Kent and York. So welcome, Umran. Good morning, and over to you.
Hi, Zeljka. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen very quickly. Entire screen. It'll take a few seconds. Can I just confirm that you can see the screen? That should be. Oh. Zeljka, sorry, can you confirm that's showing the presentation? Okay, I'm going to assume that you can see it. I'm going to make a start. So welcome to the session. I'm going to be talking about navigating the labyrinth, career resilience, identity, and future-proofing. And obviously, this is part of the Catalysing Change in Chemical Sciences project led by my super talented colleague at the university, Zeljka. So I'm delighted to be back here talking again about my session. So just to give an overview, the overview of the session is this is really aimed at how students and early career researchers can build long-term career resilience in a competitive and evolving job market. So in this session, we're going to explore practical strategies for developing a lifelong personal framework for career success. The session is going to address EDI considerations in recruitment and employment and support participants thinking critically about your relationship between things like a job, a career, and long-term professional growth. So I'm going to cover EDI, understanding EDI in a employment context, building sustainable career habits, navigating the very competitive job market, and really developing that clarity between a job, a career, and employability. So just for a little bit of background, I'm a senior lecturer at the university. I have taught here for a number of years, probably more than 2 decades. I've covered teaching, research, and consultancy. I've helped supported students taught anywhere from degree to PhD. I've taught thousands of students in my time, and everywhere from actually helping students go from colleges actually in some points, to all the way to the degrees, to the master's degree, and actually more importantly for this session, into jobs, into a wide range of jobs, not only just around the UK, but actually also internationally. I've worked with companies such as the BBC, ITV, Microsoft, NVIDIA, and Royalty, which I'll talk about. And my work has covered areas of social justice and equality, and also have lots of different other roles in the university, which I'll talk about. So, look, we live in a very changing world. I think it's more or less impossible not to think that. If you look online, if you look on the news, if you look around the university, it's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, and it's ambiguous. Today's world isn't just about getting a job. Okay, it's a nice, easy idea. It's about designing a life in a shifting global landscape. The idea of the shift has gone from a job for life. In the 1950s and 1960s, it was very much actually, you move on, you graduate, you get a job at 20, and you may be working there for the next few decades, to actually now having a portfolio career. Okay, so it's changed, it's shifted. Actually, in the last few years, it's shifted again. There's been radical changes. Retirement age is shifting and will shift. So again, for many, students and for graduates, you're no longer looking at maybe 20, 30, 40 years. You may be looking at 50 years of a working life that actually has, significant challenges. As always, everything I present and talk about today, it's not a solution. It's not a panacea. I wish I could give you a formula, a secret formula that would solve everything and enable you to get a job. But actually, it's not. Almost like, ChatGPT, it's a prompt. It's a little bit of information which you're going to try and experiment with. You may try a few things, you may fail, but eventually you will grow. And so hopefully there'll be a few things here that you can take away today and learn from. So in terms of the session, I'm going to talk about kind of 4 key areas. Obviously, understanding EDI and employment, job versus career and employability, navigating competitive markets, and building sustainable habits. Again, thinking about your career trajectory and your possible kind of span in terms of where you'll be engaging in this 40, 50 odd years. That's a really important part of this. So understanding EDI in employment context, the British context. Okay, so I think to start off with, it's really important for me to give you a bit of a reality check. Post-Brexit economic kind of conditions shifted the UK. We've seen visa changes, we've seen all sorts of changes in the UK that have kind of shifted the environment, particularly in terms of employment conditions and the job market. COVID, it's impossible not to talk about the last few years and not talk about COVID. It changed and quickened employment across the world, and actually in the UK, in terms of remote working, in terms of remote opportunities, in terms of employment. It changed things. These things were kind of happening very slowly, but COVID literally forced changes overnight. And for many students, actually, some students may remember the changes, and they were significant. It's impossible to talk about the kind of modern day society without talking about the rise of AI, particularly generative AI in the last few years, and automation, and the kind of impact and threat it has on the creative and tech sectors, and actually, the threat and the promise it holds for students and for graduates. The social climate has changed. Okay, so it's impossible not to look at the social climate around us and see the rise in the discourse, the polarized discourse that we see on the news, that we see in the streets, that we see in the universities, that we see everywhere. But against that, okay, against the threat of AI and the promises and challenges, against the threat of COVID, against the changes and the complexities that we see post-Brexit in terms of the UK, there is hope. The UK still faces a skills shortage in critical thinking, and this is where you come in. So against that really difficult, quite testing and sometimes uncertain environment, I want you to remain hopeful. The elephant in the room. I am going to talk about something quite difficult now, and I think it's really important, particularly when we talk about an EDI context. We hear this term unconscious bias. You'll hear it, you'll see it, and you may see this and hear this in your new places of employment. You may get a job, and you may have a document or a PDF sent or a presentation where staff members will talk about unconscious bias. But what they won't talk about often is racism, bigotry, discrimination, bias, prejudice. They exist, and you will be impacted by them. You will experience them if you haven't experienced them already. Now, this is something that many people shy away from, and I won't. I've experienced it, and I probably will continue to experience it. Okay, so the UK jobs market has structural inequalities. It will have these issues and structural inequalities and problems and faults, and actually they are changing and they will change. Actually, they will always be there. Recruitment bias remains a real thing. So simply by changing your name in blind recruitment studies actually can afford you better jobs. This is a sad reality that we face. For many, we've covered this and spoken about this term of the glass ceiling. There is a ceiling which you will often hit at certain points in your career, depending on your protected characteristics, will prevent you. Actually, there's a great term that was covered, which is called a concrete ceiling. For many, it's not a glass ceiling, it's a concrete ceiling. It's something that you will hit and have to fight. Again, against these things, I want you to remain hopeful. They are difficult, they will test you, they will push you, they will sometimes exhaust you, they will sometimes make you upset, but actually there are ways to navigate around that, and mechanisms and ways to still succeed and still be successful and still find the career of your choice. So in terms of the economic argument, there's a particularly great a review actually that was conducted in 2017, Race in the Workplace, that talks about the potential benefit that the UK economy has from the full representation of BME individuals. So if the full representation of BME individuals, the benefit was fully exercised in the economy today, we would see an estimated £24 billion added to the economy, which is 1.3% of the GDP. So the reality is, look, the ethnicity pay gap exists, but the opportunity, particularly for BME individuals, is a £24 billion boost to the economy. So you are not a risk. If you are someone, and I would widen this, anyone with a protected characteristic, you are not a risk to the economy. You are not a burden to the economy. You are not someone that kind of takes from the economy and doesn't add. Actually, you are needed. You are an economic necessity. Women are an economic necessity towards the economy. If you're an ethnic minority, you are an economic necessity. You are needed. So as I said, when you look at the data, it's very clear that this is not a tick box exercise. This is something where you are needed. And actually, if you expand this outside of the UK into the global workforce, again, the argument there is true. So look, here's the question: is having a diverse workforce a tick box exercise? Is it something where the companies are just saying, okay, look, we want a diverse workforce and we'll just do this to meet legislation and the Equality Act? Actually, it's not just that. Again, the McKinsey report in 2020 revealed that diverse companies are 36% more likely to outperform their peers. Why? Why is that a case? Why is it a case where you have diverse companies or a diverse workforce? Why is that beneficial? Well, just think about from your own experiences. Your background provides you with a unique lens and a unique insight on problems. Okay, so it gives you a unique perspective. Your experiences, your life experiences have given you a unique insight, which again is a competitive advantage. So when we look at the knowledge economy, your protected characteristics actually within the workforce provide you and the company with a competitive advantage. So your class, your gender, your ethnicity, all your protected characteristics give you an insight, experience, and knowledge that others lack and companies need. So again, you have an advantage here. This is not a deficit. This is an advantage. Sometimes what we find, though, however, this is an issue with code switching and authenticity. So Hewlin in 2003 described this idea of code switching, as facades of conformity. Ethnic minorities in particular, having to change your voice, having to change your hair, your topics of conversation to survive, having to change who you are to kind of fit in to a workforce where actually it may not represent you. It can be exhausting and it's an emotional drain. It can be very difficult trying to forge a career and then trying to fit into a new organization. Again, what I would say is don't shrink to fit the chair, adjust the chair to fit you. So the solution towards that, in terms of trying to fit in and trying to change who you are to fit in, is actually no, be strategically authentic. Take the decision to actually think about your background not being a deficit and your experiences not being a difference to be hidden, but actually data to be utilized. It's data, it's insight. Okay, so actually you move from this goal of fitting in to culture add. Your perspective, you'll bring your perspective to the room that actually it currently lacks. So think about the gap analysis. Okay, so you're in a new place of employment. You started, you're in a meeting, and suddenly they're talking about a particular topic. Actually, a part of the strategy is to be identify the blind spot. What is everyone? Maybe everyone here is of a certain class or a certain gender or ethnicity, and actually, your insight will bring in something new. So frame the observation as a competitive advantage. From my perspective as an ethnic minority, from my perspective as a woman, from my perspective as a disabled person, it could be any of those perspectives. Actually, I think the problem is here. I think we need to adjust our strategy to capture this particular audience, or we've ignored this sector, or we've ignored this approach. And actually, from my experience growing up and experiencing that, I think this is something that we can do differently. So you've changed this idea from your experiences being a deficit, being kind of looked down upon, or being, spoken about in the news or the wider context, to actually, I can use this to my advantage and actually the company's advantage. So think about that as in terms of authenticity. Okay, so I'm going to move on slightly now to developing clarity between a job, a career, and employability. Okay, so it's can I just double check? Can you see the slides? Sorry, I'm just going to double check. Are they moving? I'm just going to stop for a second and double check because I've just got a message. Are they still moving? Again, I can't see the chat, so I can't tell if they are moving or not. So I'm just going to take a 1 minute pause. And I'm just going to mention that I've sent Zelka.
We can see, we managed the slides now, don't worry.
Excellent. Okay, that's good to hear. Okay, I'm going to make a restart. So you will get technical issues like that, and again, just work with it. So clarity between a job, career, and employability. Very, very important. One of the most important things for you to realize, particularly for those at the start of their career. Okay, so question for you, and I want you to think about this. A job versus a career. Are they the same thing? Okay, and when you start off really in your you're very early on, and you've just graduated, and you may be a postgraduate student, and you're looking for a job. Actually, it can feel like the same thing. But actually, are they different? And if they're different, how are they different? Okay, just think about that for a second. You hear these terms, and they sound interchangeable, but they're actually not. How does employability fit in? So again, this is a term that you've heard in university. You'll hear it all the time. You hear it with your employment. How do they intersect? Are they the same thing? Are they different? How are they different? And I've put an image there. I was thinking about this morning, actually, of how they kind of intersect. And there's a reason why I chose that particular image, and it took me a while. So, okay, let's start with some definitions. A job is a transaction. It's a time for money. It can be short-term. A career really is your narrative. It's a narrative. It's a story of your professional life. It's that longer thing, not the shorter thing. And employability, according to York, is a set of achievement, skills, and attributes. Okay, so those are the definitions, but what do I mean by that? Okay, so a job is a transaction. It's time for money, it's short term. It can change depending on your goals at the time. Okay, so your goal may be, actually, I need to buy a new computer, or I need to buy a car, or I want to go on a holiday. I'm just going to get a job to fit in. So it can be a small thing, and it can depend really on the goals that you have at the time. It can be linked or unlinked to your career. So it doesn't have to serve your career. So I've had lots of jobs in my kind of life. I used to, and I'll talk about this later on, I used to work in game in the Arndale Centre selling video games. That's not really linked. It kind of is a little bit into my kind of career as an academic. You can have lots of jobs. They can be held in parallel. So you can hold more than one job at the same time. So again, this has been the big shift that we've seen, particularly over the last few decades, is there's been a shift from holding one job to several jobs. They can be held linearly. You can hold one job after the other. In terms of range, you can range from a few hours to 50 years. So again, in some instances, I know an individual who's worked at the university for 34 years. That's been her sole job. Actually, you may find a job for a couple of months, a couple of days, a couple of weeks, or for longer. So again, it can have that range. A career really is about your narrative. That's the story of your professional life. And often we can maybe have one or two careers per lifetime, or often you may, if you're lucky enough, you'll meet someone who's quite adventurous, and they will have several careers in their lifetime. They've been an astronaut, they've been a pilot, and then they've moved on to something completely different. It can change. Your career can change depending on your life. So some people have life incidents, they have changes, they can be made redundant from their roles. I know academics that have been made redundant and have moved on to do something completely different. It can be a major defining part of your professional and personal identity. So your career, often for people, it's a defining part of who they are. So again, that's why it's really important to think about. The range can be anywhere from 10 years. I would say you can't really have a career anything less than that. A career of a year really isn't a career, it's a job. But it can range, so actually anywhere from 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And then the really important point for you guys is employability. So what is employability? Okay, it's that set of achievement, skills, and attributes. This builds over the course of a lifetime. Actually, it can also diminish. Your employability can diminish. It's something that you have to kind of regenerate. It's not just the result of one thing. It's the result of your jobs. It's the result of your career plus life experiences. Your life experiences and the things you do outside of your jobs and your career serve your employment and actually help build employability. So again, this is a key point for you to remember. It does not require a job or a career. It sounds odd that actually my employability, normally you'd expect that to build in a job, which it does, or over the course of a career, which it does. But you can actually gain employability skills outside of that, which again is a really key thing for you to consider. Savikas actually talks about this idea of a career. So, you know, there was, you know, for years, many people and students were told, look, a career is like a treasure hunt. You go out and you find the perfect job, and that becomes, you know, an amazing career, and eventually you retire and, you know, you're having a wonderful life. Savikas said, no, actually, it's not that. You have to build your career. You know, it's an active thing. It's not something that just kind of falls. You know, there's actually a theory that, you know, career construction theory behind it. So he argued there are the 4 C's. Okay, the 4 C's that you've got to do in order to kind of construct your career. The first one is concern. And that isn't anxiety. That's not worry. Look, what am I going to do? But this is about future orientation. Okay, so you don't just look at the deadline that's coming. Okay, I've got a deadline on Friday. You project what's happening in the next 3 years from now. Where is the job market going to go in the next 3 years? What's going to be the big explosion in your area? What's going to be the big thing in your area that's going to change? Okay, and how can I pivot? How can I change what I'm doing around that kind of next thing? So I'm concerned. So I'm reading the industry reports. I'm going to conferences. I'm finding out. You're demonstrating concern. What's happening 3 years from now? Okay, and again, that is part of constructing your career, because it may be that you pivot and you change things. Control. In academia, it's very easy to feel like a passenger. Okay, you wait for the grades, you wait for the feedback, you know, you wait for permission to do things. Control is about agency. It's saying, look, I am going to take control. I am going to organize things. I'm going to do that extra thing. I'm actually going to take the incentive and organize a symposium. I'm going to organize a little bit of a conference or a workshop, or I'm going to make it up. I'm just going to do these things. And actually, that can give you a huge amount of power in terms of constructing your career. You're told to do certain things in your job, but you'll always have a room. You will always have a little bit of space to do these things that you choose, and that will give you control. The third one is curiosity. Okay, so sometimes you will get pigeonholed. You know, you will get kind of stuck in a corner. Curiosity is that bravery to say, hang on, okay, look, I'm a creative tech student, or I'm a chemistry student. I'm a chemistry student. I've just done my chemistry master's and my PhD. But do you know what? I'm going to learn a little bit about games design. I'm going to take up a new tool. I'm going to look at gamification. I'm going to look at dance. I'm going to look at how I can combine, you know, dance and chemistry. It sounds odd, but you're going to be curious. Or I'm going to look at intellectual property rights. I'm going to start experimenting and thinking about the side of the possible selves, actually experimenting on who you could be and developing those new skills in line with concern. Where is the market going in 3 years? And the last one is confidence. Okay, and it will take you a while to develop this thing, and you may not have it right now, and you may be the most unconfident person in the world, or believe you are, but trust me, you won't be. Okay, it's not arrogance, but it's resilience in action. You will face barriers. You will face racism potentially. You will face sexism. You will face all sorts of things, and rejection. Guaranteed rejection is one of those things that will come. You know, things that you'll try will fail. Confidence isn't about kind of just ignoring that. It's actually what you do. It's the belief that you hold. Actually, look, it's okay. I've failed. You know, I've faced that. I've been rejected, but I'm going to get back up. It's almost like that quote from Rocky. It's no, you know, it's not about how hard you can get hit. It's about how hard you can, you know, what you do after you get hit and you get back on your feet. So actually, do I have the tools? Do I have the confidence to get back up? And I can handle this. This is okay. And you will develop that. So again, the 4 C's. Think about the 4 C's in terms of kind of constructing your career. This is the thing about employability skills. So we often hear about these soft skills. You know, we're developing these soft skills in university. I would say, look, no, they are not soft. Let's reframe that and actually don't talk about them as soft skills. Okay, so soft implies that they're optional, they're easy, they're, you know, these are easy things to do. No, okay. The reality actually is that, you know, technical skills in the UK have a half-life of 5 years. Human skills are durable. So let's not talk about them as soft. Let's talk about them as power skills or core competencies. So the World Economic Forum report, Future Jobs, said empathy, active listening, and leadership are now the top tier economic assets. So in terms of your kind of the soft skills that you want to look into developing, or actually you have developed in the university, emotional intelligence, the ability to manage your own emotions and influence others. Daniel Goleman talks about that being the primary differentiator between good employees and star employees. How to manage people's emotions and influence others. I would completely agree. Cultural intelligence, the capacity to function effectively across national, ethnic, and organized cultures. Again, we're not talking about having organizations now sometimes that are just local. They may be national or international. You may be working for an international organization. So that ability to work across different groups is critical. So your diverse backgrounds are not a barrier. They're a high CQ asset in a globalized market. Again, you are not just part of Salford. Salford is part of a global network, global universities, many different organizations and cultures working together. Adaptability quotient, your ability to unlearn and relearn. So again, as part of university life, you've seen this, you will learn something, you will then develop new skills, you will unlearn and relearn. So again, these are three really important kind of skills. And the AI context, okay, so humanics, Joseph Ayoun talks about humanics, the integration of technical literacy and human literacy. Okay, so AI, look, AI is a big threat, and it is a threat at the moment. It has potentials, across the board. It will be faster and quicker at processing data. It can, it can take an Excel spreadsheet and process it within, 2 seconds and give you data from that. But what it can't do is negotiate a sensitive contract. Okay, what it can't do is mentor a struggling student with that human touch or lead with moral courage. There are still things that it can't do. These are the things that add value, okay, to an organization, and these are the things that you have to offer. Okay, so think about that, not just your technical skills, not just your soft skills, but think about those as power skills. Okay, your empathy, your listening, your teamwork. It's the reason why we ask you to work in teams and do group work, which many students sometimes don't like. But we are trying to encourage and develop those kind of power skills, which are really important. So in terms of actually developing that wide range of skills, it's called the T skills, the T-shaped people. So what you'll do is you'll develop a range of different skills, and this is why employers hire. They hire for the horizontal, your skills. And again, there's an example there in UI analysis, coding, testing, and deployment. Okay, but they retain for the vertical. So what you want to do is, as I said, develop that kind of portfolio of skills which you've got. And I'll demonstrate how in shortly. So, it's not just your technical skills in chemistry, just in terms of experimentation. That may be the kind of the deep expertise you've developed in your PhD or in your master's, your undergraduate degree. But things like teamwork, things like your listening skills, things like, communication skills, your writing skills, those are your kind of generic skills. Those are your broad skills that employees are looking for. Because, as I said, jobs are changing, employment is changing. They may not require that expertise and depth now, but what they're looking for is that kind of wide range of speciality in that disciplines. Thinking about the ladder. So I've spoken about this idea of a career ladder, this idea, you start on your job and you kind of move incrementally. That is obsolete. It's gone. The new model really is this kind of squiggly career. Okay, so lateral moves. Sometimes you may not move up in a job. Sometimes you may move sideways. It sounds odd, but actually that's still learning. So moving sideways is actually still a move. Why? Because learning is progression. Okay, so it's not necessarily the case of you look for a promotion, and this is the advice sometimes I've given for students. Sometimes it's actually, have you reached a plateau in your workplace? Do you think you should look for another job, the same job, elsewhere in another company? That sounds a bit odd. No, actually, it's a very useful thing to do. Why? Because sometimes it can give you that different experience, that different insight into how an organization works. Here's a question for you to consider. Are you really ready for that dream kind of career and that dream job? And it sounds, most students say, yeah, absolutely, I'm ready for it. I'm ready to go in and get it. And actually, I'd say sometimes, actually, the answer may be no. Okay, so what you've got to think about is use jobs as a stepping stone to build and develop your skills. Remember, you can have more than one job. So look, that period between, graduation and looking for jobs, you may have a period of time where actually there is nothing. And what I would say to you, there's nothing stopping you from developing a kind of an approach, which is, look, I'm going to do more than one job. And it sounds odd, but yeah, as I said, I mentioned I used to work in game, which I'll talk about shortly. You can work in Tesco. Maybe your approach is, look, I'll work in Tesco for 2 days a week and I'm going to develop the people skills. I'll work stacking shelves. It sounds odd, but that is going to help me develop people skills. Maybe my people skills aren't great. Okay, and then on top of that, maybe for 2 days a week, I'm going to do some remote work. Again, remote opportunities and remote working is huge. There are whole, websites and organizations and companies dedicated towards, looking at providing remote work opportunities. Maybe I'll do that to develop my technical skills and my, communication skills. And actually, okay, I've got 2 days a week. What do I do in that 2 days a week? Think about employability. Don't need a job. Maybe I do charity work. Maybe I do charity work, develop empathy and understanding, and actually how to work with, it could be, homeless individuals. It could be working for a women's shelter. It could be all sorts of charities out there, and they are always looking for help. And I guarantee you, doing the work will make you feel, it will empower you. It will give you confidence. It will make you feel good. It's a good thing to do. And second, that you will develop skills which you can then take back to a new employer for your dream job and saying, actually, I spent the weekend working for a women's shelter. And actually that gave me a huge level of understanding and empathy in terms of working with, individuals who'd gone through all sorts of things. My example is I worked in game. So many, many years ago, my first job was working in game in the Ardale Centre. And I used to hate getting up in the morning. But what that gave me was literally, the experience of getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning, getting ready for work, catching the bus all the way and walking through town and starting work, and just that whole kind of routine of getting up and getting to work. I'd never had that before, really. College had started later, and in school, obviously, we kind of got in. Used to get in quite late. But again, it was just that experience, and that experience really helped me when I, got a job and graduated and took a job as a part-time lecturer and eventually as a full-time lecturer. I had that grounding. So again, don't be afraid of looking for things and opportunities out there to develop your skills. One thing I want to mention is Ikigai, which is a Japanese concept, okay? And as you get older and more experienced in your life, and I think this is a really important concept to think about. So it's a Japanese concept for reason for being, okay? So this is the idea that you will find sometimes things you're good at. If you find something you're good at and something you can paid for, we call that a profession. Okay, that's where they intersect. If you find something you're good at and something you love, where that intersects is a passion. If you find something you love and something the world needs, that becomes a mission. Okay, but if you find something that you can be paid for and the world needs, that's a vocation. But what you ideally want, what is the goal, and what should be the goal, is this idea of reaching a point of where all four things can intersect. All four things can kind of combine, and you get this kind of amazing combination where you find something. It could be a job, it could be, as I said, hopefully a career where something that you're good at, something the world needs, something that you love, and something you paid for intersects, and you end up with something which is wonderful, that wonderful intersection. So this could be an aspiration, and I want you to really kind of think about this, because actually the world is your oyster. What could I find in terms of my skills? What am I good at? What can I get paid for? But what do I generally love, and what does the world need? And I would say I have found this in higher education. I'm good at teaching. I can get paid for it. I love games. I love landscape design and AI, and actually the world needs it. And within higher education, with that Salford, I think that intersection between actually this is where the place I can do it. So again, just think about this. It's not just about kind of pay and salary. It's really about well-being, which I talk about later on. Okay. Navigating the competitive jobs market. Let's just move on now. The hidden jobs market. Most jobs are not found, they are created. They are created in conversation between people who trust each other. That's by Reid Hoffman, the co-founder of LinkedIn. There's a stat, according to Forbes, that says 70 to 80% of jobs are never formally advertised on job boards. Now, isn't that shocking? Isn't that kind of strange to think about? Actually, if 70% of jobs are never advertised, how am I going to get it? How am I going to, enter that? The trap is most graduates spend 100% of their energy refreshing, going to Indeed or Glassdoor. That's the visible market. That's what people see. That's the shop front, and everyone's fighting there. Okay. And then you've got this other side. Why do employers hide jobs? Why are they hiding jobs? They're not really hiring jobs, but because it's a risk. Hiring a job based on a CV is a risk, because it's just a paper exercise. Yes, they'll have processes and forms and things, but it's always still a risk. Hiring a referral is high trust. If you can get someone in a company offer a referral of someone saying, actually, I know this person, I've worked with them, I think they're good. You want to interview them, and obviously they still have to go through an interview process. That is low risk. There's also a cost to this. So again, the cost now of going through CVs, going through a process, it's time consuming, it's laborious. Most companies do want to still fill in jobs through kind of, internally, ideally, or word of mouth, rather than at, as I said, this final thing, which is the job description. The strategy could be, look, okay, if that's a problem, how do I approach it? Well, your approach is find ways. Don't necessarily ask for a job. Look for opportunities. Look for opportunities to engage with that company outside of a job. Now, it sounds a bit odd, but is there an opportunity to do some unpaid work? Is there an opportunity to engage with them? Is there a way to do some research to look at what they do? Is there a way to become known to that company before you then approach and then look for a job? Now, that's not an easy problem to solve, but actually it's a way in. So I want you to think about this in terms of perspectives on the recruitment process. So the way that a typical employer fills a job is often they start within the company. Okay, if that doesn't work, they then use their networks. If that doesn't work, they use their agency. If that then doesn't work, they will then place a job advertisement. That's the kind of last thing they do. But then if you compare that to how a typical job seeker prefers to look for a job, the first thing that often you will do is respond to a job advert. Rarely, actually, the more effective approach is using an agency to select and actually, this is my CV, these are my skills, and find tailored things rather than just kind of hitting 200-300 jobs. The second, thing down below that is using their networks. And I'll talk about this shortly. Networks are incredibly powerful. Okay, and then the last one, the best one really, is from within the company. If you're within a company, it's a lot easier for you to progress, to find positions. Actually, look, there's a promotion opened up, and you can go for it. So again, just think about that in terms of how typical employees prefer to fill a job, and actually how typical job seekers actually fill in. They are actually very different, and actually there are loggerheads. So how can you take advantage of that? First thing I'd say is think about mentors and sponsors, which is a really critical thing for students, and particularly graduates, to think about. So Sylvia Ann Hewlett in The Sponsor Effect, she gives a beautiful quote there. A mentor gives you their perspective, a sponsor gives you their credibility. Okay, so think about mentors. Mentors talk to you. Okay, a coach, a guide, Zeljka, for instance, someone who provides you support, career advice. It's private. You do it in one-to-one. It's low risk. Okay, increases your confidence and your competence, your competence and your confidence. An example of that is a lecturer, an academic, senior lecturer providing you with pastoral support. They sit with you and they mentor you. Okay, it could be a family member. But sponsors are a key thing. They are power brokers. They use their political capital to advocate for you for promotion, for funding, or hiring, that when they're not in the room. Okay, when you're not in the room, the relationship is public. Often it's open, it's high stakes. They often will put their reputation on the line for you. Okay, it increases your visibility and opportunities. So it could be something like your dad's best friend could be a sponsor. Again, for international students and for those who come on visas, you know what a sponsor means. Sponsor holds a very particular meaning, doesn't it? But again, I would say for the job market, it's exactly the same thing. The mentorship trap. There's actually research on Harvard Business Review that shows that ethnic minority professionals are often over-mentored but under-sponsored. So often you will get lots of advice, but you will rarely get people to open the doors for you. Okay, but when you think about the Centre for Talent Innovation, I've done some research and said that professionals with a sponsor are 25%, 23% more likely to move up in their career than those with just mentors. So I've got a task for you, okay? And I want you to think about this. I want you to identify who your mentors are, okay? Think about that. Who are my mentors? Is it the academic? Is it someone that sits with me? Is it someone? And if you don't have them, you need to find them. Have you outgrown them? You can outgrow your mentors. Mentors are only sometimes meant to be there for a few years, or if you're lucky enough, they will be there for a long time. I've had mentors. Okay, I still have mentors. I still speak to people in terms of my career kind of progression, which sounds odd as as an academic who's been there for for more than 2 decades. Actually, no, it still works for me. Have you outgrown them? Can you find new mentors to help you develop a skill? Find a sponsor in your network. Ask them to help you. Okay, and you're thinking, look, I don't have a sponsor. Well, okay. Well, I want you to find and engage in activities to grow your potential list of mentors and sponsors. I want you to join a cooking club. It sounds really odd. I want you to join a local rambling association. I want you to join a networking or a club or something to help you find and develop those sponsors. I'm going to move on now into this idea of you've got your network, you've got your mentors and your sponsors, and there's a wonderful theory called the 6 degrees of separation. Okay, that any person on earth can be connected to any other person through a chain of acquaintances of no more than 5 people. Okay, so I'm six degrees of separation away from anyone. It sounds really odd, doesn't it? Does that sound like nonsense to you? Okay, so here's a question: how many people between you and your dream opportunity? Look, I want to go work for GSK, or I want to go and work for, you know, doing cancer research and for, you know, Pfizer. For one of the other big companies, you know, how many people between you and the head of Pfizer, for instance, or the head of GSK, or one of the big tech companies, or, you know, Facebook? So I'm going to start here with me, okay, as an example. And I've got 4 individuals. I've got Donald Trump, I've got Tom Hanks, I've got Beyonce, and I've got Arnold Schwarzenegger, the actor, the Terminator. How many people between me and them? Let's do this as an exercise. I actually did this. Okay, so for me, I actually met the Duke of Edinburgh. He's not within my network, when he opened up Media City. So when he opened up Media City in 2000, I think it was 11, I opened up Media City to the Duke of Edinburgh. I met him and took him around. I'll show you a picture later on. Duke of Edinburgh has met Donald Trump. So actually, there's only one person between me and Donald Trump in terms of the network. Let's try it again. The person that you see there, unfortunately, passed away several years ago. She was a wonderful colleague on the Asian Media Awards, a fellow Ali, Umran Ali, a wonderful co-organizer for the Asian Media Awards, which is something that we still run today at the university. But she introduced me at the time to Art Malik, the actor, who was there at one of the Asian Media Awards. Art Malik starred in True Lies, the film with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So again, it's odd to think how small these networks are. Let's try Tom Hanks. One of our graduates, actually someone who worked with a late colleague, Denise Vernon, a wonderful colleague, was the writer for Goodness Great for East is East, Ayub Din Khan. Ayub Din Khan, one of the actors he worked with in East is East, is Om Puri. Om Puri worked in Charlie Wilson's War with Tom Hanks. So again, it's shocking to see how close these kind of networks are. Okay. There you see on the right hand side, Jamil Shaukat, one of my former students. Jamil is now he's a music editor. So now he's worked on music videos. He's done some amazing things actually after graduating. One of the videos he worked on was with Ed Sheeran. So he worked with Ed Sheeran and Stormzy on a music video. Ed Sheeran worked with Beyonce. So again, you can see very quickly that our networks are very, very, very small in reality. And again, just some pictures to demonstrate that wasn't true. You can see Art Malik, me and Ayub Din Khan, and me and the Duke of Edinburgh, and Malak Mobeen, and then C.E. Livingston, and a picture there with the late Umran Ali, a wonderful colleague from the Asian Media Awards. Okay, so it's not just about strong ties, it's also about weak ties. So Dr. Meg Jay in The Defining Decade talks about weak ties. Weak ties are the bridges of which new information crosses to reach you. Your strong ties provide you comfort, your weak ties provide you opportunity. So Mark Granovetta talks about the strength of weak ties in his book, and says, look, the problem is that you've got strong ties, your friends, your family, your lab partners. The problem is that they move in the same circles as you. Okay, they have the same information, the same jobs. It's an echo chamber. What you want to do is you want to take advantage of those weak ties, your acquaintances, guest lecturers, former classmates. Okay, that's where the power is. They move in different circles to you. They have different bridges of information. So what you've got to do is you've got to escape the silo. Sounds odd, but you've got to kind of ignore those strong ties and think about taking advantage of those weak ties. Again, the research demonstrated that 80% of people who found a job through a contact did so through a weak tie, someone that they only saw occasionally. So I want you to think about that. I'm not going to go through this scenario, but I want you to think about this as a task, okay? So it could be, you're thinking about a job, you think about a career. Who do I go to? Who do I approach? You may not get anything from approaching your strong ties. I want you to think about your weak ties, okay? So I want you to do a 3-year audit. I want you, not right now, after this session, I want you to go through your phone. I want you to go through your Facebook, your LinkedIn, your contacts. And I want you to find 3 people that you haven't spoken to, okay, in 12 months. And I want you to reach out to them. I want you to say, look, I saw your recent post, I saw your recent article. It just reminded us of, the stuff that we did. There'll be a reason. There'll be something that you share in common. I hope you're well. Look, it'll be good to catch up sometime. Catch up with them. Okay. If you're looking for a job, if you're looking for an opportunity, it may be that they need help on something. You can help them. And obviously when the opportunity arises, look, I'm looking for a job, I'm looking to move, you know, I really want to go work in the United States, I really want to go work in Canada. Any ideas? It could be, that could be the start of your next job. Very quickly, I'm going to go through social media. Social media can be a very, very powerful and useful way to grow your network. Okay, so one thing I would say is, what happens if I Google you? Do you exist on social media? Okay, so companies can sometimes look on social media. Do you exist on Facebook, LinkedIn, and on Twitter? One of the things I would say, sorry, I'm losing my voice, is think about who your social media, be very careful with it, because again, it can have an impact in terms of your career. Developing your social media is part of networking. So again, I'm not going to go into the full detail, but networking will be a very, very important part of what you're doing and how you're doing it. Okay, so think about your career network. Okay, make use of your contacts. Everyone has contacts. Okay, think about your neighbor. Think about the person that, you know, the taxi driver who may drop you off to school or university. Okay, think about your next neighbor, the person you meet at the shop. They will have contacts, and those contacts can be part of your kind of network and help grow it. So your doctor, your dentist, you know, the person in the cafe, your hairdresser. Again, it sounds really odd, but those are your contacts. Those are people that may know someone who knows someone that will give you that opportunity. LinkedIn, one of the most useful ways, I'd say, in terms of social media. It allows you to communicate. It allows you to grow kind of your professional network. Small tips: make sure you've got a complete profile if you're serious about kind of developing your professional identity. Professional photograph, okay, and show your professional headline, you know, connects you as a professional. Okay, nobody really adds students, by the way, but they will add professionals. Okay, so, you know, maybe you are a student or a graduate, but you will also be a professional. You may be a professional writer or do something on the outside, which will give you that professional identity. Networking, okay, everyone talks about networking, and it's not easy. Okay, so networking, the first thing I'd say is, look, be authentic. Okay, and it's a really hard thing to do, being authentic and moving into an environment and working in a place where you may not feel that actually, again, you've got to code switch or be something else. This is really about kind of developing those skills. And again, I'm not going to go into detail due to time, but building a rapport, you know, be prepared to talk about yourself. Do you have a 1-minute pitch? Do you have a 1-minute pitch where you can tell me about who you are, what you studied, and what you're looking for? And again, practice it. It sounds odd, but you will learn to practice it. Okay, so things about, no one ever talks about this. Again, what are the norms? What are the acceptable norms? And again, for different cultures in different parts of the world have different expectations. So shaking hands in certain parts of the world is a requirement. Holding eye contact is a requirement. In some parts of the world, it's considered to be quite hostile and aggressive. Facial expressions, learning how to smile, your tone of voice, the physical space. Believe it or not, there are different kind of cultural norms about how much space should be kept. And again, if you're not familiar, ask or go to those events and actually see. Okay, levels of formality and informality. Again, in Japan, Japanese levels of formality are very different to, you know, say British levels of informality or formality, which again can be quite different to if you know, network in the United States. Is there an etiquette for online interactions? Again, a useful question for you to consider. Okay, I'm going to skip over this again for time, but think about where, you know, your peers and role models hang out. Are they online? Are they not online? Think about spaces that you can join. Think about competitions or self-assessments that you can do. Again, the whole purpose is there to build your network. Okay, use personal networks to grow your professional networks. Okay, I've had opportunities that I've ended up in symposiums that started out from a conversation from a friend, and that's how networks will grow. Everyone wants to trade. Everyone wants to look and develop and grow their own networks again. So be part of that. Right, okay. Last part now, very quickly. Well, not very quickly. Building sustainable career habits. This is a great quote here. Between stimulus and a response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies growth and our freedom. That's by Viktor Franklin, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor. Okay, so this idea, look, there's this old way of thinking about resilience. Okay, so you have to endure it, you have to be tough. I would say no, it's about resistance. Okay, it's about true resilience is agency. That you're going to take a decision to say, actually, look, you know, it's not about bouncing back or but bouncing forward. This idea of the critical consciousness. Okay, Freire talks about this ability to perceive the world. So when you face a barrier, you will face rejection and issues. Don't put this down to a personal deficit. Don't say, I'm not good enough. It may be the system out there isn't good enough. It may be the structures that have failed. So don't internalize this. Don't internalize failure of thinking if you don't have a job and I'll talk about this in a second, okay, in terms of rejection. It may be a problem with the system, in which case you think, okay, I'm not good enough for that position because there may be something wrong with that employer. I'm going to move on. There will be a space where I can find. The other thing as well I would say is, look, burnout is not a badge of honor. I really want you to think about self-care, okay? So this idea, you know, Sherman James talks about this, John Henryism, this idea of where we cope and we try and do things and we end up burning out and your career ends. If you are from an ethnic minority background, if you're a woman, if you're disabled, you will have a burden on you, okay? And it will be difficult. You will end up doing things, you know, there will be a level of invisible labor that you will have to endure, okay? So this is really about downtime. And really the last point there is about downtime. It sounds odd, but as an action, I want you to schedule in your downtime. This goes to academics, this goes to professionals. I want you to say every Friday at 4 o'clock, I'm going to put everything down and I'm going to watch an episode of Better Call Saul. I'm going to play a game. I'm going to go to the cinema. That's what I'm watching at the moment. I've just finished it. And scheduling your downtime to make sure this is not a sprint. This is not a marathon. Okay, it's a marathon. Sorry, it's not a sprint. You're going to be doing this for the next 50 years. Dealing with rejection. Okay, rejection is going to be a harsh reality of your life. It's not just about getting employment. Okay, you will face this. I want you to really think about this. I want you to think about the 100 rejection challenge. And it sounds odd. I want you to apply for jobs. Okay, and you may apply for jobs and you may not get anywhere. But then I want you to think, okay, when I get to 20 or 50, I'm going to reward myself with a free Nando's. Okay, almost like a ticket. I'm going to gamify it. I'm going to give myself a reward at every 10, every 5, okay? And I want you to remember this. For every rejection, every no that you get, you are statistically increasing the probability of the next answer being yes. It is impossible to get more than 100 or 200 or 1,000 job applications and not get a yes. Every time you apply, every time you get a no, you are increasing the chances. And again, I say this to students who kind of, look, I've applied for 4 jobs and haven't got it. Keep on going, because eventually you will get that yes, and actually it will be, oh my God, I did it. It worked. But this is a part of, you know, as academics, we deal with it. We write papers, they get rejected. We come up with ideas for courses, they get rejected. But eventually you get through. So again, learn how to deal with that and learn how to accept that as being a part of life. Very quickly, anti-fragility. The beautiful quote by Nassim Taleb talks about the wind extinguishes a candle and energizes a fire. You want to be the fire and reach for the wind. Okay, so this is about the idea of being anti-fragile, not fragile where you break under pressure, not robust where you stay the same, but anti-fragile, you will get stronger. Okay, so you, as I've said, look, the UK jobs market right now is volatile. We've got AI, we've got recessions, we've got funding cuts, we've got all sorts of things, but you will be an anti-fragile job seeker. You are going to pivot, you are going to turn. If your field is being disrupted by AI, you're not going to fight it. You're going to basically say, right, I'm going to master that tool and I'm going to make it as part of my portfolio. I'm going to make the disruption my specialization. Okay, every no is a stop sign and it's going to point you to a different direction. Lastly, I'm going to say, look, you know, there's a beautiful quote is that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Community is not about belonging, it's about survival. So actually the reality is, look, you will build a community. Your classmates, it's not about people who are CEOs of companies or heads of positions. Think about your peers. Your peers are your future collaborators. They may be your future managers, okay? So think about that. You already have an alumni network there. You already have a group of students there who are doing the same thing. You already have a group of students that have graduated from the university. So as a task, I want you to do this thing. I want you to find future, you know, graduates and alumni that have graduated from here, and I want you to try and contact them, saying, look, I'm a final year student, I've just graduated, how did you make it into your job? Is there, you know, is there potential for me to work there? You know, do you have 15 minutes where you could just kind of give me a little bit of advice? Reach out and be brave. And I guarantee you there will be students out there with people saying, you know what, I know how you felt, I know how this felt. Absolutely, that's fine, I can meet you for coffee, don't worry about it. Look, to finish, the context is the market is tough, but you are equipped. University is not just about technical skills. It's all about those power skills that we've taught you, the kind of teamwork, communication, that resilience that we're embedding. EDI, look, if you have a protected characteristic, it is not a deficit. It is an asset, and I want you to use it. I want you to be proud of it, and I want you to think about using it. Strategy, it's not just about building applications and writing stuff, but building that portfolio of skills. And really the last thing I want to say is it's about building those habits. Okay, consistency beats intensity. Okay, self-care, building that kind of thinking about those transferable skills, developing that kind of lifelong approach where you think, hang on, this is me for the next 50 years or 40 years. What do I want to do in terms of building that healthy lifestyle, building a walk-in, saying I'm going to take lunch every day no matter what, saying that you're going to watch an hour of TV every Friday no matter what, 4 o'clock, or play games or go for a meal or go for a nice walk. Okay, so this is about sustainability. Final things very quickly. Update your LinkedIn. Find one of those week time messages and really think about your superpower, not those soft powers. They will be your future superpowers. Success is to be measured not by the position that one has reached in life, as by the obstacles which they have overcome. That was by Booker T. Washington in his book Up from Slavery 1901, which is a really beautiful quote, and that's how I'm on the very end. So thank you very much. I think I've got a few minutes to run slightly over. As I said, the presentation will be available for those who want to read it. Obviously, there's a recording. Thank you very much. I'm going to end it there.
Thank you, Umran. And we have, thank you to everyone who entered the questions. So we're going to go through questions now. The first one is from Danny Barsham, who's a CEO at a company, and he left a comment, really. It sounds like a fantastic opportunity for personal growth and career development. So thank you, Umran. Our first question is from our colleague Anna. Umran, how do you think would it be useful to mention knowledge of a foreign language when job hunting?
Absolutely, I would say, without a shadow of a doubt, because again, it gives you a unique insight, and it may be that the company is looking to, expand or develop in a different part of the world, and you have that expertise. So again, from my area, we call it localization in the games industry. If you mention that, it will take you straight away. And I know one student actually mentioned this. He said he spoke French. So, his second language was French, and the company said, right, we'll take you on. The reason being is that they were about to set up a new localization field and work with companies in France. And actually that they knew Simon would be the liaison between that. So I would say absolutely, it demonstrates, an extra skill and something that is needed. So again, it may be the case that you are their next person to then send off to different parts of the world. And again, you're not just working in Salford. It's not just about your local environment. We're part of a global workforce. So again, there may be someone there that thinks, hang on, actually that's something we may need. It gives you a different insight. It gives you a different understanding. It gives you a different perspective. So I would say absolutely mention that. Put that really high up in your CV.
Great. Next question is from Akansha. So am I gaining experience that employers outside academia recognize?
Okay, so am I gaining? So I think what you're asking there is, can you gain experience that employers that? Absolutely. So, sorry, I'm just going to end this now very quickly. Just think about all the different things, as I spoke about, in terms of employability, whether it be working for a charity, whether it be, all the kind of different activities that we do, they will be recognized in addition to your degree. If you're going for a job with other graduates, how do you separate and differentiate yourself and make yourself stand out? And it may be that charity work. It may be working in your parents' shop. It may be working, doing something extra. It may be working with your local community centre. It may be working, doing something at the local school. Those are all those kind of soft transferable power skills which you can mention. Look, it's not just about the degree. I also did X, Y, and Z. And that is what new employees want to see, that kind of diversity of skills. Because as I said, things are changing all the time. And that human element, often those extra skills, are always recognized. They're always beneficial. So I would say absolutely. In some ways, they are key. Everyone may have the MSc in chemistry, or the MA in creative games. There will be 5,000, 2,000 people that have that. But what's the extra thing? What's that little cherry on top? We say is actually, I did some charity work. I worked on a shop, or I joined a Ramblers Association. I led on this. They are absolutely useful.
Right. So our next question is from Yara. So how can students balance long-term career planning with the pressure to secure immediate employment?
Again, long-term career planning with the pressure. That's the first thing I'd say is look, in terms of immediate employment, is it a job that you're after? What's the goal? Is it just to pay the bills? And there's no shame in thinking, actually, look, I'm only able to secure a job in Tesco or a job elsewhere. Actually, the good thing is most of our graduates do find highly skilled employment. It may be a case of, look, you only get 2 days a week. and then you balance that. So don't worry about this idea of long-term career planning. That develops, that happens when you're in a job. Really, the goal right now may be to pay the bills, or maybe to secure 2 days a week. So often I say to my students, look, it may be that you work 2 days a week on paying the bills, and 3 days a week actually, you may be volunteering, or you may be building your portfolio. So I would say don't worry about that. Long-term career planning develops and will develop. Right now the pressure may be, look, I need a job to pay the bills. It will happen and it will find. Be flexible. Don't just think about Salford. Don't just think about the Northwest. Literally think about the world. We have a global workforce and so you may be remote working for 2 days a week. And then, as I said, working locally for a charity. You can do all these things at the same time.
Going through more questions. Umran, you're very popular. There's a few more coming after this one. If you had to give one piece of advice to students trying to break into competitive industries, what would it be?
One piece of advice, just don't give up. You will win through. Just persevere. Learn to take rejection. That's the number one thing, and internalize it. I always say this, and I've got a letter. I should have showed you this. It's a rejection letter I received 20 odd years ago, and I framed that letter. And it was that, Umran, you're not good enough to get the job. And I was heartbroken because it was for the games industry I wanted. But the person had written a whole letter in terms of what I should do and how I should reframe my portfolio. And I thought the worst thing that they could do was ignore me. The worst thing someone can do, the worst thing they can do is not giving you feedback, actually giving you feedback. And that letter, I looked at and thought that person had so much care. They couldn't give me the job, but they gave me advice. And I actually took that advice on board and reframed and eventually got work. And I've kept that letter, and it's 25, 26 years old or something. And I framed it because it was so powerful. So do not give up, because you will get through. If this is something that you're passionate about and something that you really want to do, you will get through. And I say that from having looked at thousands of students, from students who are now living in, one of my students who lives in California, he lives in the United States, he's one of the world's best game writers. He started off here. He started off in Salford many years ago thinking, maybe I can do it. And I said, look, just don't give up, carry on. So I would say just persevere, put your head down, and you will get through.
Okay, and the next one is from our academic partner, Dr. Sarah Withers. How would you advise students to approaching a mentor? Would you suggest it is someone they directly linked to their work?
I think with mentors, again, they can come from different aspects of a student's life. How would you advise students approaching a mentor? Just think about who inspires you. So for me, mentors have always been people that you look up to, and you suddenly think, hang on, there's a certain level of the way that they talk or how they present themselves, and actually I would like to be like that. I would like to learn that insight. So again, it's about being brave. And I would sometimes suggest someone that isn't directly linked to that network. It's also about the weak ties, someone from a different walk of life, someone from a completely different perspective. Maybe you are kind of in an echo chamber where you've got that kind of it's an echo chamber, and you want someone from a different perspective, different walk of life, a different gender, a different ethnicity, a different approach to give you that perspective and actually help you reflect on who you are and help you grow as an individual. So I would say for chemistry students, or for those in the science school, go and get a mentor in the creative arts if you can. Get a drama mentor, someone from drama, someone from performance, a singer, a writer, because that's someone that you've probably never engaged with. Okay, and it's the same with me. It's the reason why I really like working with the science school, is often I work with people from a very different background, very different walk of life, and actually it gives me a sense of richness and a different insight and perspective. So I would say be brave, just ask. It will never go wrong. Just say, look, would you advise, would you mind giving me 15 minutes to talk about how I develop X, Y, and Z? And I guarantee you 9 times out of 10 people will be touched and people will help you. So again, be brave.
That's very good advice. Another one, I see a lot of applications that look identical due to the use of AI for this part of the process. So what advice would you give to students facing those applications and considering AI as a tool?
Okay, so again, separate yourself from the competition. Everyone's doing this at the moment. So they're putting in their CVs and ChatGPT and getting and what we're finding is employers are also doing this. So employers are also using AI and using AI to filter out other AI. Separate yourself, okay? So, obviously you don't want spelling mistakes. It may be a case that you pass it through just to give you a little bit of help, but then tailor it. spend that time on knowing your CV and looking at it and tailoring it and adding that uniqueness. It could be the way it looks, it could be something different. It will be spotted. And again, there are apps and employees that are using AI tech now to filter, obviously, machine-generated CVs and portfolios. The worst thing is that you put in an AI application, you don't read it, and you get the interview, and suddenly you're asked questions, you know, on a thing that you don't understand. So again, really, this is your first foray. This is your first, you know, entry point into that employer. Know it, don't use it. It's a very seductive and easy thing to use, but I would say, you know, in part it's a tool. Reduce it back to a tool, and then add that uniqueness to it. What is something that's unique about you? And there is, even if you're an undergraduate, even if you've just graduated 2 weeks ago, there is something unique about your journey and about you that an employer wants to find and seek.
A question from our PhD communities. As a PhD student, how can I turn my academic skills into a lifelong framework that supports multiple career paths?
Academic skills. So again, think about those skills that you've developed. You know, could you write them down? And as I said, it's not just those kind of soft skills. You know, things like teamwork, things like you know, independence. You know, being an independent researcher is so incredibly powerful for your lifelong framework that actually people will not often tell you what to do. You will have to take agency and do it yourself. And again, that is your lifelong framework. You know, what we often say as your supervisor, look, take some time out, look after your mental health. Again, take that. So there are elements that we've integrated within your teaching and learning, I would say, that absolutely will support you for the next 20 to 30 years. And that's the most important thing. Ask that question. It's an amazing question. Ask your supervisor that question. Okay, and I guarantee you they will tell, how did you do it? Actually, what was your journey going from an academic, from being doing your PhD? I do this with my PhD students. I tell them, this was my journey, and actually, hopefully I want you to kind of follow my kind of pathway and the way I've done things. Multiple career pathways. You need to be open and adaptive. No one knows the future, especially with AI and automation and the way things will go.
Thank you. So going forward, because we have a few more questions coming, what would today's Umran tell Umran at the start of his career if he were to do it all over again?
Okay, this is going to have to be our last question because I do have to leave. I would say you're going to be okay. I'd say you've got a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, a lot of apprehension about the future and making it, and you've worked hard. But you can have so many amazing adventures, meet so many amazing people, enjoy the ride, and don't be so stressed. I think just really enjoy it. You're going to be fine. And I think that's, especially for ethnic minority students, you know, you've got so much kind of built up expectations maybe from your parents and your community, you know, and I know that from speaking to students from Nigeria, from India, from all parts of the world, even from the UK, you know, from Salford, there's expectations. You may be the first person in your family to do a degree. Enjoy the ride. It's going to be a lot better than you think. It's not going to be as bad as you think, and you're going to be okay. So really enjoy the ride.
Well, our academic partner Julia is thanking you very much, and I'm also thanking you very much, Umran. So thank you all for attending, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Take care.